Good morning, everyone. Welcome as you start coming on in. Just getting it pulled up on my side here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sick of This Shit Publications. I'm Nick Paro, not your dad, joined by Sean Talbeaux. I want to make sure I said it. I didn't actually confirm ahead of time. But
Talbeaux.
Sean,
Yeah.
Talbot, it's good to have you with us. We were talking a little bit ahead of time. Sorry, we're just a couple minutes late. Everybody getting started. Here's you as you come on in. Good morning. Good morning, Sean. Can you introduce yourself to everybody in the audience because most probably aren't familiar with your name? You and I are meeting for the first time today, and I'm really excited to get into this conversation about masculinity. So I'm Nick Paro, not your dad, here on Sick of the Ship Publications for an intelligent masculinity, better humaning conversation, joined by Sean Talbeaux. Sean, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Nick. It's good to meet you. I write a Substack called What Doesn't Change. And it says, the idea is like preparing men for what's coming by helping them connect to what's been here all along. And what I mean by that is, there's always information that's coming. There's always stimuli. There's always stuff that's going to, overwhelm and send us into activation. And what are the resources available to us as individuals, as a collective, in our communities, in the earth, that we can resource from, so that like this loneliness, this I don't know what to do, this the stuckness and the anger and the shame and the activation, and so that we can really ground that, and we can really learn how to connect with our bodies and connect again. So I do somatic coaching. I offer different resources as a guide for men. I that's what I love. That's what's been helpful for me, and I try to pass it along.
I love that. And I'm glad that you reached out to me to want to come on and join this discussion and add your nuance and your understanding to it. So thank you for reaching out. And like I said, I was going to do is I asked you this just quickly before the show, but I want to ask you live is what caused you to want to reach out? Why did you want to join this discussion and add your commentary into it and your experiences? What made you want to reach out to me?
Yeah, I said one thing, and that was, and I think that there's two. One is that it's scary. It's scary to reach out. It's scary to think about getting on with you. I've seen a bunch of your interviews and shows, both in the intelligent masculinity realm and your other stuff. And the thought of getting on here and thinking that I have something to say is terrifying on one level. And the deeper reason is that, like, I trust something in me was like, oh, I have something to contribute to this conversation. I've spent a lot of my time, I've spent, more than the last decade, having these conversations, sitting in hundreds of men's circles, working with many, many humans. And I think that if we're going to talk about masculinity, intelligent masculinity, let's have a fuller breadth, because like there's the conditioned, uh, there's the intellectual, which so many of us are really, really good at, staying in our heads about, and then there's the embodied, and we like drop down into our hearts, we drop down into our bodies, and there's a fuller expression that's available, and I wanted to bring some of that nuance in.
I really love that. I've gone through like years of therapy at this point. I grew up with a child therapist, child developmental psychologist for a parent. I've gotten to see the wise mind and learning how to be in a mind that is not intellectual all the time, but is
Totally.
more balanced. But bringing the whole body into it is really important too. And maybe some of that might be an area that I haven't. That's an area I haven't talked about as much in these discussions. So it's really awesome that we're going to be talking about the whole body. You and Ann Kramer would probably have a really interesting discussion. I spoke with her 2 weeks ago, on for intelligent masculinity, and she has a wholeness framework and model around being a whole person. Um, and
Also,
how do we put this puzzle of our of the self together so that we can actually have a complete whole person? And I think you two would have a really interesting conversation because she works with men a lot, and I would love to. I want to make this a space where we connect these disparate communities as best we can, or these communities that are doing similar work,
mhm.
um, and putting in these efforts to make whole and complete selves, not just for men, but for everybody. But targeting men because I'm a man, and that's who I we that's part we're part of the problem right now. Big part of the problem right now. We may be causing the problem right now.
We
Um,
might be.
we may or may not be causing the problems right now. And it's important to talk about how we solve it and how, but not how we solve it like because you and I can't solve it individually, but how do we solve it as a group? Um,
Yes.
and so, can you talk about that with your experiences on like the folks you've worked with, your own growth through masculinity? Is like, what are you doing to actually talk to the men around you and build these community spaces? Because it sounds like you're a big part of that. Is what are you doing to actively build these spaces for men?
What am I doing to actively build these spaces for men? I think just having the conversation, just writing about it, talking about it. I encourage men in my life, the ones I work with, to bring the conversation into the smaller pieces of their life, right? So a few weeks ago, I was on the phone with the guy at the auto body shop because I needed to get my windshield replaced. And we were talking, and he was doing his computer thing, and kind of on hold. But I asked him, like he said, he had kids, and I just kind of asked him. I was like, "What do you struggle with as a father?" And here's a guy that up to that point, like very like blue collar sounding, kind of traditional. Maybe he was in the military, I don't know, but he just dropped right in. He's like, man, I get really reactive with my daughter sometimes, and I get really mad, and it happens really fast, and I don't know what to do. And I'm just like, this is amazing. Like we could just have this conversation, and we dropped into it for a few minutes, and at the end of it, he was like, "Do you want to be friends? Do you?" Men are hungry for these conversations. We don't
Yeah.
act like it because we're trained to not act like it. We're trained to silo off and protect and do all the things. But man, it doesn't take much to create a container where men are really able and willing to just drop into their stuff, you know?
You're so right on that. Like the it's a it's something that we've talked about here a lot in my various shows is the idea or the patriarchal system that we have. The system that we have is bad for everybody, men too. Like men
Mhm.
are directly impacted by patriarchy because if you're not the in group, you're the out group, and the out groups are all oppressed. Um, and we just left it, I think, in a lot of areas for men, and just it is a self-made problem by the patriarchy that men don't have friends, that men are unwilling to have these, or are not unwilling, but afraid to have these conversations on the surface, at least. Um, can you maybe what's been your experience with that? Like the outside of this one example that you just gave, because this opens the door for other experiences. Is what other types of experiences have you had where you've been able to see just below that surface of this false bravado based egotistical masculinity that we're trained to believe is what real masculinity is, but
Yeah.
just below the surface? Like, do you have any other examples of getting just breaking through and seeing the true side of people who really are just desperate for help or desperate for friendship or desperate for love in some way? And no, I'm not downplaying the severity of some men, but a lot of folks are just desperate for a little bit of love
Yeah.
and friendship, or maybe not love, but well, yes, love, and but also kinship, like friendship and community with other men that doesn't feel forced.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I want to say here, and one was kind of harkening back to where you're talking about the whole person, right? Patriarchy is awful on everybody. It's awful on the women. It's awful on fucking everybody. It's not. That's not questionable. What it costs men is our humanity, because we're specifically taught to not empathize. We're specifically taught to cut off the parts of ourselves that are oriented toward needing connection, toward being nourished by like interconnection, right? So we're taught through our nervous systems literally that we might die if we feel. So how we deal with that, because we all have these needs, right? And you've been in therapy a long time, like we all have needs that we're trying to get met. And when we can't get them met directly, like we do all these like sideways things in order to get connection. Where is connection available? It's available on Reddit, through the manosphere, through all these different, things. I'm like, oh my God, this feels close enough to connection. And for a lot of men, like it's not, you can't force that. You can't like, just get under the surface. So you have to, for me, like my experience has been like I invite people into spaces. So I run retreats. I've been a part of many like wilderness immersion men's retreats, where the men who show up are in various states in their life. Maybe they're completely blocked off, but there's something in them that's like, I need this, I want this, I'm willing to take the time and the money out of my life in order to like go connect, to see if my humanity is available to me. And what I see in these spaces is like, initially, like everybody's there in the first day or so, or in the first, few minutes of a men's group, and it's like, am I safe here? Am I okay? Can I be me? Is it okay to feel? Is it okay to talk about my stuff? And for some people, they're instantly, it just really needs to come out. And for some, it takes a while. It takes a lot of safety. For me, entering those spaces, I come from a lot of trauma in my lived experience, and in my inherited experience. Um, and it took me a long time to be like to not walk into those spaces and feel super activated and feel super like, oh my God, I know there's something good here, but I'm not sure if I'm able to like drop my defenses and drop my armor. Even though it feels heavy and kind of rusty and not really helpful anymore, it's still like, it's still keeping me safe on some level. Um, does that answer your question? It's more
Yeah,
like
no,
broad strokes
I want to
than,
dig into this a little bit. Is
yeah,
how do you what type of things do you do? Like what type of activities, what types of things are you doing in
yeah,
those wilderness spaces? Specifically, let's take this wilderness space um, to activate that feeling of safety
yeah.
and to encourage that. Like what are you doing to help these men, and how are you and if possible in these areas, are you making it accessible to all walks of men, to include like from the disability community to anyone out, because often many spaces like wilderness spaces can be left out for those with disabilities, especially if they're physically presenting disabilities, but they can be very hard on those with disabilities. But how are you making those spaces, one, inclusive for these men, but two, what types of activities are you doing to encourage that level of safety?
Awesome question. And this kind of like bumps up against a lot of my critiques around traditional men's work, which is that it's deeply inaccessible. Um, like a lot of the spaces that I've been a part of, like I've had to kind of like find my way into, because I didn't have quite enough money for the thing. So I asked for scholarships or I did the thing, and here I am, like I have all the privilege, right? Um, a lot of my critiques have been, a lot of people in men's work, a lot of the men are middle to upper class, white, middle-aged-esque, and like that's where a lot of the experiences are. A lot of the coaches are like, you know, you have to be success. Like my niche is like people who are successful, but are seeking deeper meaning and things like that. So like that's what it's framed toward. And it makes sense to me that a lot of people from marginalized communities wouldn't feel safe in those containers. Some of the things that I brought to those containers when other people were leading them were, hey, can we have a conversation about racism? Can we have a conversation about misogyny? Can we have like, if we're not here in service to how we're treating women, if we're not here to like treat women better, like what are we doing here talking about sacred sexuality and masculinity and presence and groundedness and all the things? Um, and on the other side of things, there's this like the rites of passage work, the Mankind Project, to a certain extent, like Sacred Sons, and like these things that are like, here's the framework. Here's an agenda that we're going to do to you because we're pulling on threads from lost traditions and indigenous traditions, and we're going to like kind of impose this on you. That didn't work for me either. Because it was just like, you're coming at like, you're not contacting me at all. You're just like imposing your thing upon me. And the thing that I do differently, which was like I had to invent it out of thin air, was remove the agenda, remove the obligation for anyone who's participating to do anything. There's this idea that we have to, like women want men to be vulnerable, like open up and share your feelings and go hang out with other men and go do that thing. And I'm holding the space and I hold a circle and I'm telling them, you don't have to be vulnerable here. You don't have to share. You don't have to feel your feelings. There's something that brought you here. And so if that wants to happen, great. Like we're here for it. But you don't have to do anything because we've been told our entire lives that we have to do it. We have to do this. This is how we have to show up. These are the archetypes that we have to embody. We have to provide and protect. And so the spaces that I hold, whether it's a wilderness immersion or whether it's in the front office of my friend's naturopathic, acupuncture clinic here in Portland, um, just come and sit and let's just see what comes up. Right. And I have some ideas. I have some practices to do, or we can breathe together. We can do these different things. Um, but come as you and see, and you check in with yourself to see if it's safe enough for you to show up.
I love that, and I like that it's different to hear somebody say you don't have to do anything. You're here for a reason, but we're not going to force you into doing things. And I like the like what you're talking about as folks are pointing out in the chat is like the archetypes and these key words that you're using that describe what we have to be and what we have to do to be considered a man, and how tiny of a box that masculinity is, if it even should be called masculinity in any way, but that tiny box of personality that they want people that we're supposed to exude or show to the rest of the world. Um, and that's a great question, Darby, and I'll ask it because it is a really good logical follow up to all of this too. Is are men resistant? Am The question is, am I wrong in thinking men are resistant to group stuff, to like these group activities, these group therapies, these group sessions, these group immersions? I would say no, that men aren't resistant to them. We're afraid of them
Mm,
because we're trained to be. I think men are trained to
spot
be
on.
afraid of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
I think that's one of the number one things that I run into when I tell people about my groups or when I'm talking to somebody who wants to come to a retreat or something. They're like, "Wait, you want me to sit in a circle of other men?" And there is fear there, right? Because like, what are the other contexts in which we're in male exclusive spaces, right? Locker rooms, like sports field, like I didn't really grow up in a traditional experience, but like when I'm around only men, like it's fucking scary sometimes, right? Some of the most hurtful moments in my childhood and my young adulthood were when I was with only men and I got to see what was under the surface. And I was like, I don't like that, right? So it makes sense that, you know, thinking about it, coming into a group of men who are, you know, there's this awesome, like under the pretense of like, oh, here, we're here to be vulnerable or here with each other. Like part of the masculine for me, and I'm speaking from like Taoist philosophy, part of the masculine is being willing to take risks and learning how to take risks, not from this like careless, reckless place, but from this grounded, aware place. My vision is broad. I can feel my breath. I know something has to happen here. I don't know what it is, but I'm feeling the call toward that thing, and I'm going to take the risk. And I'm going to listen to the feedback that comes back. Maybe that wasn't a good idea, right? I just launched this business. I'm like, wow, that felt good, and it wasn't the right thing. I walked into this group of men, and oh wow, here's this other man who's willing to like, you know, like share from his heart, you know, share his struggles over here. Here's this other guy. If you don't take the risk, you're not gonna like you're just gonna stay in the little box. And where I'm coming from, stay in the box as long as you need to. Because at some point, for some of us, there's this point where it's like it's not working enough that we're almost like compelled to take the risk and to like go sit or you know talk to the guy on the phone, you know. Um, yeah, men are resistant. Men are resistant to doing things that we fear, and that's part of our privilege. Honestly, like we have gotten to this place of isolation and loneliness not by accident. Like we're part of that box is like all the stuff that we don't have to do.
Yeah. So, how have you helped translate this from, or how has this been helpful for some of the men who have gone through with you and worked through these groups to maybe translate it back to some of their other social circles to be able to continue practicing this? Because it's great to practice these types of things in isolation. It's a great experience to learn and be able to provide the entry point for yourself to be able to like really become human and start feeling again and like letting yourself be a whole person. Is like, how do you help, or what do you do, or what experiences have you seen of people coming back to you afterwards and saying they've applied this into their real life and they've seen success, maybe bringing it back to their social circles, or maybe now they have found a friends group of men that they were dying for and have been able to make that connection where they have a group of men they can cry around, or things like that. Like, what success stories have you had from this work?
Totally. As it happens with a lot of people who it kind of engage their personal development work when they start looking at their behavioral patterns, when we start looking at like the stuff under the surface and
Mhm.
like being like, wait, that doesn't work anymore. I think I'm going to put that down. What invariably happens, this happened with me, this happens with so many of my friends, so many of the people that I work with, is that our relationships start to change because we're learning to relate in a different way to our own stuff, to other people. We're wanting to be more skillful. We're wanting to be more considerate and kind and all of these things. Um, and the relationships that we have are there almost because of a lot of the patterns that we've been carrying for our whole life, right? So what happens is when we start engaging this work is that some relationships start to fall away and some connection with communities start to fall away. Like marriages fall apart because they've been propped up by the ego identity, by the story, by the trauma that we keep like playing out on each other. And on the surface level, like it's kind of a sad thing. Like it's sad to lose connection, right? And what happens, like I ran a series of men's psychedelic retreats a couple of years ago. and it was like the same core group that was coming to each one, but uh, more people were coming in. And at the first one, nobody knew each other. They like I was the only person that everybody uh, knew. And what happened very, very quickly was they would come and they would become friends with each other. And this is like cross generationally. Like we had like, a 25-year-old guy becoming dear friends with a 70-year-old man. And they're going to the coast together and walking on the beach. Their families are meeting. They're meeting up for dinners. Like they create their own community. One guy is he's sharing music with a whole community every week in a way that he just wasn't before. And so we find people in our lives who are also self-reflecting, who are also becoming more aware, who are also like wanting to show up as better fathers. And it's like when we're attracted to that, like that becomes more solid in our life. And so almost everyone I have worked with in like the in in a container capacity, so people that I've coached, people that have come to my retreats, almost every single one has come back and been like, my life is better because of this work. Not because of me, not because of Sean,
Mhm.
but because of the work that they engaged and the connection that they're cultivating on their own, as a result of just being around other people who like were giving them permission to like be more whole and to like feel their humanity.
Have you noticed any differences in response, say, for those who have been most res- afraid of it at first, afraid of making this connection, or most hesitant to make, or most resistant? Have you seen them make, has their change in like friendship circles in their life, has their change been more dramatic than others who've come into these spaces?
Like unequivocally. Yeah.
And
Um,
so
yeah.
that'll I'm gonna lead you on with a follow-on question to that is it worth us continuing to reach out to people who we know are hesitant right now, like who are the most diehard against it right now? Is it our obligation to continue reaching out? I know we don't have to do anything as men. I know we don't. We're trying to break away. A lot of this conversation is breaking away from the have to do. But what are we? What can we do in our lives to practice, but also have like, has this turnaround been worth
Yes. Uh,
it?
yeah, you don't have to do anything. And if this is something, if this experience is something that you would recommend to others, then maybe you want to recommend it to others, right? Have the conversations. Like when you're at the bar, like invite them to the thing. If you're part of a men's group or if you're part of a, like whatever your thing is, like invite them in your some people are just like just no affect, like just it doesn't land, they're so disconnected, and that's okay. That's just where they're at. Maybe they find it in 10 years. It took me a long time. Somebody first told me about men's work and I was like, I don't know. And 10 years later, like this is my work, right? um is it how do I say this? I want to say this in the most succinct way possible. Men need examples. We need examples. We need to see other men doing the thing so that we can have permission to do the thing. Whether that's babysit, sew, like cry, you know, really connect, just to like feel like anything that it like when we see a man that we trust doing a thing, I'm gonna feel more easeful in doing and accessing that thing. So if there's any way, I don't think like active invitations are as quite as effective as just like being you in the world and being willing to just like whatever it like whatever embodying, as you say, like intelligent masculinity is for you in the world, like be that. And like it sounds almost trite to say these days, like be the change you want to see in the world, but it's like when other men see that, I've been in coffee shops talking with men from my men's group, and just, we're just having a conversation, and a young man comes through and he's like, I've been listening to you. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to eavesdrop on you, but I've been listening to how your conversation is going and how you're speaking to each other. And I just want to say, like, I aspire to have those types of conversations. I want to have those types of conversations in my life. Like, that's happened to me like 5 or 6 times over the last 10 years. And like, I cry, like, it's so meaningful. And it's not like I'm some paragon of communication. It's just like this guy's experience is that, like, he's had so little of men speaking openly in his life that, like, that, and something clicked for him, right? So like go to the coffee shop to have these like more dropped in conversations. Like do it in public. Like be a man in public. Be the man that you want to be in public. And when other men see that and they have permission to see that, because we're all in our silos, So like what you're doing, even just now, having this show be a part of your larger spectrum of your media company, like this is it. It gives permission to whoever is joining, to just come on and have these conversations and be willing to carry them forward and bring them to the women, right? Like the women are like the biggest advocates of men's work. It's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, yes, women, and anyone who's not traditionally a cisgender male have been begging men to pick up this work and to do this work, and it's it's beyond frustrating for so many that we haven't. That's more men haven't done it. Um, and thank you for saying that this is a space for that to encourage that. And I think it's important that we do that. I intentionally did this. I intentionally made this space like like I'm doing right now for the intelligent masculinity or like just full spectrum masculinity, or humaning is like it's intentional. Intent matters, and doing it purposely all the time is just be yourself. But it's okay to be yourself, and it's okay to want to grow in that self. And I think that's one of the big differences is I'm not telling people they have to grow. I'm encouraging them to grow alongside me. And I think we just need to reframe that space for ourselves. Um, is that like how have you seen that in terms of like words and like your usage of language? Like I'm not in a policing way, not in a way of like force. Maybe it's self-policing, and that's how we refer to it to ourselves. Oh, woof woof. Um, is is how have you seen your language evolve, or the way that you talk to yourself, talk about yourself, talk with other men? How have you seen that evolve
yeah,
over the time of your work and the course of what you're doing, to encourage more folks just naturally to become part of this discussion?
yeah. Couple of things come up. One is curiosity. Um, when we're curious, like curiosity and shame, which is a thing that a lot of us deal with. A lot of men work with shame, even if it's, we're not super conscious of it. Curiosity and shame can't coexist in the same body at the same time, right? So for most of my life, I was just awash in shame. Like everything, I would just hate myself. I would just like I'm not good enough. I had this little thing I would say, "Shut up, Sean," when I felt like an idiot for saying something, and I would say those things to myself. And language matters. Language matters. Like the words we use, the words we choose, they have an impact, right? When somebody like insults you at the grocery store or whatever, like when there's like rude people, like it makes an impact. So when we're curious about something instead, when there's enough spaciousness in my own nervous system to be like, oh, this dude's having a really hard day. Hey man, are you feeling like are you okay? Like what happened there? And not bringing the like grudging, stuff that we're so like I need to protect. Inviting people into conversations instead of like demanding that we have I need to talk to you. Like, hey, I'm doing this thing and I'm wondering if might be a good fit for it. Just curious, like no pressure. Like the different ways that um there's more flexibility, I think, in my language than there's ever been. I grew up, I was a writer and a poet, and I was told literally to like use more action words, use more verbs and adjectives, like very strong language. And I still believe in that to a certain extent, but it doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't have to be divisive. It doesn't have to be like separating. Um, there's this idea that there's an idea in one of the therapy modalities that I learned. There's this idea of the organic unfolding, and the organic unfolding is like trusting that whatever's happening in our consciousness, whatever's happening in our humanity, in our feeling world, in our spiritual realms, or whatever, that it's just happening, right? Like, and when it runs up against boundaries and obstacles and harsh words and things, like it contorts and it does certain things and it protects. But if we just create more spaciousness and openness for that thing and just allow it to happen and just get curious about it. Oh, you're interested in Legos now. Awesome. Let's go play Legos. Oh, you're interested in like you want to walk this way instead of that way. Like, is it okay to just like be walking down the street and just 180 and turn the other way? Like allowing those impulses space. And then when they become more relational, when they become more, oh, I just did a thing. I said a thing and her face did a certain thing and she walked away. That I feel sad. Like, I should go say I'm sorry. I want to go apologize. I want to go repair. I want to go bring it and allowing these little impulses that maybe in the past were like would get shut down by fear. Um, really giving them space and giving them like this is how we allow the humanness, the love, the whatever you want to call it to come out. And when we have more space to allow it, it can come out. Like,
Yeah. So, like, if you were to if you were to give this a definition, like what? Because I know I've talked about this in all of my shows about like what intelligent masculinity is in my eyes, what um, what better humaning or just this openness is really about, and what it feels like is what if you were to like define the work that you're doing in terms of like a pathway for men. Is there a definition you would put down on like the type of masculinity that you're encouraging men to become a part of? Is it or better human or humaning that you're encouraging them to become a part of? Is there like a destination that is a defined one?
mm,
Because I have like my definition of what intelligent masculinity is, and could be, which is the refusal to outsource accountability onto others and the discipline to live with the consequences of our values and actions.
mm.
Is but is there a roadmap that you have for those like a definition to get to that type of state? Is there somewhere you're encouraging men to follow towards?
Okay. Yes. The answer is yes. And the first place that I'm going to start is I'm going to kind of like tease apart. And I know you've had this conversation before, but I just want to tease apart being a man and being masculine.
Hmm.
Masculinity is an archetype. It's like a meta archetype. It's like an energetic force in the universe, right? And it's polarized by what we call the feminine, yang, yin, yang, right? Like we're
Hmm.
balance, up, outward, forward, down, grounded, back, right? Um, if there's a definition of masculinity or how to be a man in the world, like it has to involve balance. It has to involve both. There are times of the day, there are times of the year, there are times in stages of life where it's really, really great and helpful and awesome to just like be out and to do the thing, to be initiating, to be taking action. And in order to fuel that, in order to give that structural integrity, like we need those moments of groundedness, of like like lying low, self-reflection, of going to therapy and like learning the things. So has to include balance, right? And inherent in balance is relationship. So if there's some way that men can engage masculinity in a more aware and conscious way, like it has to be relational. Relationship to self. I know what's happening in here. I'm aware of what's like what's happening in my body, what's happening in my thoughts. I'm aware of I'm in relationship to my children, to my intimate partner, to my wife, my boss, like all the people in my world. Like I'm paying attention to them. I'm paying attention to who they are. I'm paying like this is where I get permission from. This is where I'm doing my modeling. Um, and that relationship is the model for it's like the vehicle for connection. It's the vehicle for like kind of like reconnecting to our humanity. So here's the like there's a I have a framework. Everybody has a framework. Um,
Mhm.
there's four parts of it that I've seen work over and over and over again. Like develop awareness, like build our awareness of what's happening here, our patterns, what's happening in our body in a moment. That's the most important part. Just pay attention to your breath. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to like be spiritual. You don't have to go to yoga. You don't have to be a hippie. You can just like literally just pay attention to your breathing. Oh yeah, there's some tightness in my chest. Oh yeah, there's some like tightness in my belly. Whatever. Just that. And for some men, it's not safe enough to pay attention to their body, and that's important to acknowledge, right? Building awareness, building from that awareness, building relational depth. From that place of relational depth and awareness, that's when we can kind of expand and like go out, right? So we've done the work, we've done the groundwork, we've built the foundation, we know who we are. Now we're like out in the world and we're expanding. And whether that's building a business, whether that's going on a psychedelic journey, whether that's, like just doing the big outward thing, um, and then bringing it back in, integrating. I started, built the foundation, built some self-awareness. I'm paying attention to that stuff all the time. I'm paying attention to my relationships. I'm learning to repair. I'm learning to give and receive feedback and to not take it personally, but to like take it as like that's this person's experience. How can I honor this other person's experience? Is such an important one. And building capacity. This is like, I should put this like capacity right now, especially as we learn to lose power in the world. And this is a really scary concept for a lot of men, but what's happening on a larger level. We talk about like Joanna Macy's Great Turning. Um, this idea that like this whole capitalist patriarchal thing is like, it's been an experiment and like there's a shift happening, right? And a lot of the suffering in men is around isolation and kind of like losing power. There's a lot of students have been reaching out to me and they've been like, we grew up in this like education system where all these feminist teachers are looking at us and they're like, you're male, you're the problem. And what does that do to somebody developmentally? Um, what we need to do is build our capacity for our own experience, for our own awareness, for other people's experience, and be able to hold ourselves as these other experiences are happening, right? Not taking them in and taking them personally and making them about us, but literally like opening our conduit, breathing, grounding, and able to hear people, able to hear like somebody who's been oppressed or marginalized, or their family's been genocided, or like whatever it is, to be able to make space in our hearts for paradox, for my experience to be true and for somebody else's experience to be true at the exact same time. When we have that capacity, we can integrate this whole process of, our awareness, like, we're in relationship, we're connected, we're not isolated. We can do the big thing that we need to do, like dive into our purpose, and we can come back in.
I I think that's really awesome. To The idea of building the experience, and one of the things that I talk about, and I think probably that you would talk about too, is, and no, where I that is a good point, is don't blame feminism. Feminism isn't the problem.
Not at all.
Feminism is a
No.
response to patriarchy, because we have, from the masculine side, be oppressed.
And can I add a point
Yeah.
there? Like, feminism is not the problem. Um, and one thing that we need to pay attention to is that men who have been trained and conditioned for many, 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 many generations to hold power, to assume that we have privilege and power, and to act from those places, like big major societal change takes generations to happen, right? What we've seen in the last, generation, is like this kind of systematic pulling the rug, pulling the power, taking the powers away from men who've held them for a long time. And that's dangerous. That's creating a really dangerous situation. And I don't need to tell you that, because we're seeing it out in the world. Like these men walking through the streets, like the ICE agents, like just speaking the way they are at Delaney Hall. Like we're going to contract into our hardest versions of ourselves when we're threatened with the only thing that has made us us for thousands of years, right? And so if there's anything that, and this is not, and it's complicated and it's complex, because this is not the women's job to hold, right?
Hmm.
It's the women's job is to like be themselves and to express what they need to express. And sometimes that's like full level, like just intensity and separation, and let them have it. That's what we need to build capacity for. But as men, what we need to like encourage and work with each other, like we need to understand that we are creating the situation for the Trumps and the Hegseths and the Putins and all of these men to do this contraction because of this kind of meta level shift that's happening so quickly.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you put the onus onto who actually is responsible for doing the work here. And it's not those who are not the problem. It is those of us who have this structure and this privilege system being restructured as it should be, because we don't deserve this privilege, because we don't inherently have any additional privilege just because we have a penis between our legs, or just because we present as male and are cisgender, or whatever it comes down to. We don't have an inherent space. We have to earn our space just like everybody else does. We have an inherent space for existing, but it's a lot smaller than we have been taught that it really is, and that's okay. We just need to get through, and we need to encourage men to understand that too. And yeah, it's really hard. It's also really lonely. You've talked a lot about isolation and how it's self-made, and I want to continue this conversation again. I want to have you back because we haven't had enough time to talk, and like I said before the show, I have a hard stop that I got to get to another interview that I'm going to be helping
Totally.
do. So I want to give you the time here now that we have blown through an hour of discussion, and I want to have you back for more because this is really interesting, and I want to get into this more into this discussion of like owning this space and what you're doing, but also what we're doing and what I'm doing, how we're bringing it to others, so that it's not a blame game. It's a place where we can actually learn and have the capacity to grow and bring other men in. And so, Sean, I want to give you a second here too. Now that we've hit um, the end of all of this, is to promote yourself and your work and your Substack page and where people can support and find you and um, how they can become part of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. This is the hardest part for me. Um, and I just want to say, like, if I wanted to become a billionaire, I would not do this work. There's something like that that's embedded in me that's like we're doing this work because this is what the earth needs. This is what our families need, and that's why like I just feel called to it, and I love it. I write what doesn't change on Substack. I write about being a commercial fisherman and a woodworker and building capacity, building, hopefully encouraging my son to, uh, be himself, learning how to be a good father. Um, I work one-on-one with men. I do 5 month long containers. I don't believe in ongoing work. I don't want the dependency there, but I really want to offer containers for men to like drop into that, drop into their awareness, relational depth, like feel into the things and come back in and set them free and like let them go be themselves in the world. So I do one-on-one coaching. I do men's retreats. I'm taking a little pause on that because I have an intense 4-year-old. Um, and I just created a guide for men who are engaging this work, who maybe therapy is not quite the thing or haven't found a good fit for you. It's called Bowing In. It's called Bowing In. I don't have a link for it right now. I don't know how to give that to you.
Oh,
Um,
just send me one after the show, and I'll make sure it's included.
Okay, then I'll send you the link for that. It covers 8 domains of a man's life, fatherhood and leadership, work and money, relationship, intimacy, these sorts of things, and offers just a series of frameworks to think about, reflect on, reflection questions, practices, ways to think about things. If you're wanting to do your work and don't know where to start, this is a great place to start. Um, and have the conversations, ask the deeper questions, like be out in the
I love it.
world and ask the men in your life, what they're struggling with. I think that's like one of the best questions you can possibly ask, that invitation.
I think that's great. Thanks, Sean. I
Yeah,
appreciate you coming on with me and being a part of this discussion and living this in your life and encouraging men to become part of it. And I look forward to talking to you again, and having you back on here. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for being part of this. If you're here on Substack with us, hit that like button or hit the heart, hit the subscribe. If you're here on YouTube or Twitch with us, scan the QR code and join us. Join Sean, become part of the responsibility to change for ourselves, become part of us changing for the better. Um, and Sean, I'll talk again soon. Everybody, we're done being sick of this shit here. And now we're doing this shit. I'll see you again next time for another intelligent masculinity discussion. Sean, thank you so much. Thanks,
thank
everyone.
thank you, Nick. Honored, brother.